Joining me now to dig into it further, North Carolina Republican Congressman Greg Murphy, a member of the Doctors Caucus. Congressman, great to be with you tonight. I want to get your take on this, because I remember when the schools actually were reopening, and we were talking about this story that perhaps they were, helping the CDC draft its guidelines. And I understand the point that we need to consult, we need to have conversations. It's the teachers that are actually implementing the policies. But to actually, if they did let them draft the policies, it seems like it's crossed a line here.
Jackie, I will tell you this. I've been in medicine for 30 years, and the trust for the American people in the CDC and the FDA and the NIH has plummeted because of the actions like these of Dr. Walensky or Dr. Fauci. In fact, in May of last year, I actually found out about this, that she had used language verbatim from the American Federation of Teachers in CDC guidance, which should be a non-event, should never occur. I called for her resignation then, and I'm calling for it again because it is an embarrassment to the field of medicine. The CDC should come out with objective scientific data, not political garbage from the American Federation of Teachers.
Yeah, well, this isn't the first time that Walensky is under fire either. She also was criticized when she changed her mind, or the rules rather, with respect to COVID quarantines. And she essentially said that the public didn't have the appetite to stay, for the entire quarantine period. Well, what changed? Did the science change there, or are you just, adjusting because you realize that the public is getting tired with this and it isn't supportive of it? At a certain point, when you see these flip-flops, it as as an American on the ground, it makes you feel like you don't have confidence in the institution.
Well, Jackie, I agree with you completely. And this has plummeted during the entire pandemic because this administration has made it about politics. They've not made it about science. Remember, they all talked about President Trump and follow the science. But theirs has been totally political. And again, I'm calling for her to resign again. Let us get some credibility. Let us get some reliance of the American people back in our national institutions of health, and let us move forward. But if you're going to make policy and base this upon political unions, the teachers' unions, not the teachers, but teachers' unions themselves, then you're doing a bad job and you need to resign. I think the American people deserve better.
Yeah, and when it came to the teachers' unions specifically, you could argue that they had an agenda over the course of, the last 2 years with respect to how the pandemic was being handled in schools. There were a lot of teachers that, not all, but a lot, who were taking advantage of the system and didn't necessarily want to reopen, even when they realized that the children were suffering as a result. They suffered academically. They suffer with respect to their future and their earnings and the ability they'll have to catch up. And some people even suffered to the level of they didn't have the right equipment to be able to compete at home, and they weren't getting meals that they so desperately needed. I mean, you have to sit back and say, wow, who are you putting first here?
Yeah, and this is what they've done. And sadly enough, most American teachers are not this way. This is why unions are begging for people to be in the unions themselves. That's why the Democrats are pushing for forced political dues to be in teachers' unions and those types of things. Because this isn't the average American teacher. And now we're seeing a generation, many of whom will never recover from the political effects of this pandemic, forced upon them by a small set of progressive left teachers. And sadly enough, it's hurt not only education, it's hurt trust in the American faith in the American healthcare system.
Final question real quick. I want to switch gears to Dr. Fauci, because he is now saying that, we'll never necessarily know what the impact of lockdowns were, right? Because we decided to go in that direction, and no, we may not know. But I'm not surprised that he's saying that, since he was a proponent of lockdowns. And what we do know is that lockdowns, for the kids, caused a lot of problems, a lot of emotional and psychological distress, really hurt our economy as well. There are repercussions that the lockdowns we haven't even necessarily seen the full effect of yet.
Yeah, and Jackie, there was a very good study that came out of Johns Hopkins about 2 months ago that said that our lockdowns changed the mortality 0.2%. 0.2%. And then you think of the irreparable harm, the increase in depression, suicide, substance abuse, all of the things that have followed. No, of course Fauci would defend that. And, we look at Sweden. We condemn Sweden for what they did, and now they're 63rd in the world in per capita deaths from COVID itself. So no, I don't think in retrospect we did what we needed to do at the beginning, but we surely did not need to prolong it like Fauci wants to.
Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
Okay.